Hello, welcome to the Viewpoint. I am Mamadou Mbodj. My guest today comes with an illustrious CV. He has scaled the heights of, can we call it career diplomacy, which he first entered in 1981 as Assistant Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And then he rose through the ranks, serving as Second Secretary and Head of Chancery at the Gambia High Commission in Dakar, Senegal. On his return, he became Senior Protocol Officer. By 1991, he had become Chief of Protocol at the Office of the President until 1994, which he served in until 1994. And then afterwards, he worked for various international organizations, including the UN, including WHO, the World Health Organization. And then in 2017, he became Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to the Republic of Senegal in Dakar. He is currently the CEO of Diplomacy, Etiquette and Protocol, a consulting firm in this country. And I understand that he can speak, what, 6-7 languages? Welcome to the Viewpoint, Ambassador Ibrahim Ousmane Ndour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbodj. Thank you for inviting me to the Viewpoint.
Yes.
It's my pleasure and honor. It came as a pleasant surprise. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we are privileged that you're here. First, I mean, the other night, in one of our news stories, we covered where you had gone to the judiciary. You met the CJ because of a series of trainings on diplomacy protocol that you've been conducting. Tell us a bit about these trainings that you're conducting.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mbodj. My contract as Gambian High Commissioner to send to the Republic of Senegal and Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, respectively, to the Republic of Burkina Faso and the Republic of Mali, came to an end in November 2021. I came home brainstorming what next. Then I thought about my passion. I have an interesting passion, surprisingly, self-made, that is handcrafting cufflinks in natural stones and 925 sterling silver. I am from the caste we commonly call the Tigers, and my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was the greatest gold and silver smith in Senegambia, Mamadou Ndour, who originated from Foundiougne. And a week later, I got a call from Mr. Ibusila, the acting director of protocol at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that the Management Development Institute, MDI, has just established a new department called International Relations and Diplomacy, and they would like a lecture given in diplomacy and protocol. I said, why not? Then I immediately got a call from MDI, from one Madame Pulo something. Excuse me, I've forgotten her name. And then that they wanted to invite me. I said, okay, it's all my pleasure. I delivered. It was a three-hour course, and apparently everybody was impressed. And then that very week, I got the information that the African Union had expressed interest to have a resource person to train the African member states, selected officers from the African member states to undergo a training in diplomacy, etiquette and protocol. I applied, but I was told that they would rather deal with an institution than an individual consultant. By the time I went back and wanted to establish a consulting firm, I also got the information that the African Development Bank was also thinking of inviting the directors of protocol from African Minister of Foreign Affairs to undergo training in Abidjan. I said, well, this cannot be a coincidence. The MDI has just established a new department in international relations and wanted such training done. African Union, likewise, and the African Development Bank. I say, then, I'm going to establish a consulting firm. After spending all my life in diplomacy, I've just mentioned, I say, wow, I take the bull by its horn. I have the self-assurance, the self-confidence. I'm going to open a school, and the first thing I thought about was to give it a name that would hit, that would be, that would explain and tells itself what the consulting firm was all about. I could have named it after the pioneers of Gambian diplomacy in the passing of Alu Badar Njai, Eric Christensen, Ibu Momar Tal, Saliu Momodou Cham, Usman Amadou Sala, Demba Aliou Ndao, and the list goes on and on. Hassan Musa Kamara, why not? But then I said, no, I wanted something that is direct, and I decided to call it Diplomacy, Etiquette, and Protocol Consulting.
Absolutely. So what happened to the silversmith?
It's still a passion.
It's still a passion.
It's still good to have a passion. Unfortunately, I'm not wearing cufflinks today, but I cannot wear a shirt or our African attire without wearing a cufflink. And you cannot beat my cufflinks. Ask Stefan Jai, Amadou Samba, they'll tell you. Yeah, it's done in natural stone that I collected from Namibia, where I spent 5 years, and in 925 sterling silver.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you established your consulting firm,
Yes.
and then how did it go? Who were your first clients? You want to put it that way.
Interestingly enough, I started in March 2021, and my first clients were 2 participants from the Kanifing Municipal Council in the passing of Nuru Adams, Keba Haidara, Momodou Aliou Ba, and Ibrahim Assis of the Central Bank in March. Then I had a working session with the Secretary General, Office of the President, and Head of the Civil Service, Mr. Noah Toure. And he was very much interested and responded that this is in line with the public service reform, and referred me to Mr. Lamin Jawara, the Permanent Secretary, Personnel Management Office, and we had a quick working session, and he directed that I prepare the letters, which I did on my letterhead, and I personally distributed these letters. I wanted to see what the reception would be with receptionists and secretaries and so on. It was a bit appalling initially in certain quarters, and that was exactly what I was looking for. I then got the first, government is my biggest client, and the first training, the second training was attracted 28 civil servants, and when we got to the training venue, we had 35. We ended up having 35. It is acknowledged that an institution is equally important as the members of staff, and the best way to improve the performance or enhance the performance of an institution is on-the-job training. There are certain gaps that have been identified, which we have addressed. We have in our consulting firm, we train in diplomatic practice, etiquette, protocol, dress code, how to plan and organize ceremonies and events, how to introduce a guest speaker, how to perform VIP treatment, how to exchange business cards. There's a business etiquette. All these are maybe basic, but they are very important.
Yes,
We
so, and
live,
here you don't have to be a diplomat to know about protocol and etiquette.
not at all.
But that's essentially
Not at all. You
what
don't
you're
have to
saying.
be a diplomat.
That's it. So I wonder, your force intake, by now I think you've had, the last report I read, 5 or 6 badges.
7.
Of 7, you say, you've gone on to 7. So what do you think? What is the state of people's understanding of diplomacy, etiquette, protocol? What have you got? What was the baseline? What was it like?
I think people don't give it the importance it deserves, really, in certain quarters. But now we live in a global village where we don't have a choice. We are bound to adhere to certain international codes of conduct. If we don't adhere to them, we'll be left behind. And we've seen so many negativity around us, coup d'etats, terrorism, and so on. But applying soft diplomacy, it helps, and that is, I think, that is the weapon we have now. I sent a correspondence to the Economic Community of West African States in November, and they wanted to send in participants in December, and they had identified 24 participants, but that would be stretched among the 5 institutions. That's the court, the commission,
It's the
the
National Human Rights
parliament.
Commission, is it?
The
one?
commission,
National Human Rights Commission, is it?
no, the commission in ECOWAS. We're still talking
Okay, the
about ECOWAS.
ECOWAS, okay, yes.
The commission, the court, the parliament, JABA, which fights against money laundering and which is based in Dakar, and WAHO, West African Health Organization. But then they said they cannot send all their protocol officers here. Those they decided to divide them into 2 groups, and 16 came. The first group came in about 2 weeks ago. They were trained, they left, and the second cohort group left early hours this morning.
Excellent.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So if ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, appreciates the importance of this training, I'm just
absolutely
reminding
that should tell us
Gambian
something.
institutions that we should make good use of it.
Absolutely. Now, to your name, the name of your firm, diplomacy, etiquette, and protocol. Give us the distinction there, please.
All 3 are linked. They are special areas, but they have similarities. I mean, diplomacy, etiquette, and protocol are bound by set rules, decorum, behavior, and we cannot do without them. Napoleon Bonaparte, up to 1814, was behaving, excuse my language, like a brigand. And when the monarchs at the time defeated him, they convened the International Conference de Paris, and they established an international code of conduct that monarchs at the time were signatories to, and such, I believe, form the basis of the United Nations, which all countries are signatories to, including the Gambia. So we cannot just get up and do whatever we like. Let's refer to what happened in 2016, when, the dictator accepted and later on decided not to accept the election results. The ECOWAS did what it was supposed to do. Yeah, so nowadays you cannot just get up and do and behave as you like.
Absolutely. But one might be prompted to ask, these rules and the decorum, you said, and the behavior set by whom? Who set these rules?
Well, at the time, it was the monarchs then, yeah, because they were suffering in the hands of Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, we have our own culture, we have our own decorum, our own African decorum, our own Gambian decorum. Yeah, we set them, and we set the rules, and we have to adhere to the rules too.
That's it. But one imagines that the rules and decorum wouldn't it sort of get its inspiration from culture, the wider society?
Yes.
But there are various cultures.
Yes.
So how do we harmonize or come with a standard that would be, people are willing to accept, the variety willing to accept that one standard set?
Yeah, but the basics are the same. We say, we have it in our local languages, yar ak tegin. In any culture you go to, in any culture you may want to refer to, we have it, yar ak tegin. There's a way and manner you talk to elders. I remember as kids, we would sit around a big bowl of benechin. You're not supposed to, take a meat from the middle of the bowl. We were asked to, this is the bowl, we were asked to hold the edge of the bowl. We were holding the bowl for who? For the elders. And we will be given, each of us will be given a piece of meat to hold in our hands. You remember? And you are not supposed to talk whilst eating. And this exists, it runs across all cultures. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely, but this is the key.
Yeah.
Now, but the ones that we agree on as a universal standard.
Yes.
Don't you think that with such concepts, these universalist rules and stuff, they tend to be contested, no? Not in this area?
I don't think so. For example, President's order of precedence. I mean, it's the same everywhere.
It's like the law.
The law, yeah. And the profession very close to diplomacy is the legal profession. Look at the way they behave. I admire them a lot. They behave with decorum. I sing their praises. Yeah? They behave with decorum. You cannot meet a judge without bowing to greet him or her. I mean, you call the Chief Justice, his Lord, the Chief Justice, and there was a time even female judges would be addressed as Lord, my Lord. Now they I don't want to use the word feminism, but they are in their own right. They want to be called something else, something that is feminine, that is more elegant. Yeah, but I mean, you cannot contest order of precedence anywhere. It's the same everywhere. You cannot when you receive a foreign guest, a foreign head of state, the foreign guest is accorded with all honor, pomp, and glory. It's the same everywhere. But we have our own culture. We have our own culture. We are not replacing. We are not requesting that foreign cultures replace our own culture.
Okay, absolutely. But it's just that we are part of an international stream as well,
exactly.
and the like. Yeah. So, to your trainings, when you train all these trainees, what are the objectives of the courses here offer? The
objective is I want to have make an impact on the younger generation. And I have started making impact on the younger generation. They didn't know what diplomacy, etiquette, and protocol was all about. They are eager to know, they are eager to learn. Most of my participants are of the younger generation. They are eager to know. Yesterday I received a touching message from a young gentleman who said he's been trying to contact me and didn't know where to contact me, so he went on Facebook. Unfortunately, I'm not on Facebook, but somebody on Facebook gave him my number. That I congratulate that person. And he showed the interest he had in protocol and wanted to be part of it. I requested for his CV. We had a meeting yesterday, and there was one thing that impressed me about him. We don't know each other. He came, we had a ceremony, and whilst we were there waiting for the ceremony to start, this gentleman got up, and it was so spontaneous, went and started helping to install the podium. That's what protocol is all about. I mean, you have to have a passion for it. Not everybody can be a protocol officer, for example. But mind you, this training is not only meant for protocol officers, not only meant for the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I have a profile that says, the target audience, it is designed for professionals who require competency and wish to learn the skills necessary to be operational, someone who holds an office of trust, authority, or command who must understand and ensure the appropriate rules of international protocol and public affairs. Specifically, newly appointed ambassadors and diplomatic staff, government civil servants, protocol officers, embassy personnel, government relations and marketing sales, the police, the armed forces, meeting and special event planners, international corporate, honorable members of parliament. Yes.
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 Of course.
Yes. Administrative professionals, private consulting, customer relations personnel, public and private sector. Everybody this is inclusive.
That's it. Virtually any organization
Any
would
organization.
need it, particularly when you tie in that etiquette. It really goes to the personal, what the person does, how the person behaves himself, and the like.
Yes,
that's fantastic. So, principles. What principles are there? What principles do you follow in etiquette, in protocol? What are the principles that you teach in a course like this sort of thing?
Okay. The training outline, the objective of the course, the purpose of the training course is to introduce and identify participants to the ceremonial aspects of protocol, procedures, behavior, etiquette, rules of courteousness in society, respect for the order of precedence, dress codes.
Absolutely.
Dress code is very important.
Extremely so, yes.
It is very important.
Yes, that's it. So what would be the skills and qualities of a protocol officer?
You, first of all, you have to have a passion for it. You don't just want to be a protocol officer because you probably have to travel. You probably have to be always in the limelight. You have to be a good planner. You have to have organizational skills. You have to be willing to help. You have to be ready to work beyond 24 hours. I remember I started from humble beginnings as an assistant secretary, protocol officer, and I would spend hours at the airport receiving guests. There were times that even I slept in my office. I was the main architect of the Silver Jubilee Independence celebrations when we celebrated 25 years.
Absolutely.
When we had about 25 heads of states and government.
Yes.
We didn't have
Judge Bush came.
Exactly.
Younger.
Younger, yes. And we were only two protocol officers at the Ministry of External Affairs, Maudo Toure, Alaji Maudo Toure, and myself. And we coopted a lot of young, able Gambian civil servants. I remember in the passings of Mr. Charles Thomas, Uncle Marcel Tomasi, and so many other civil servants who volunteered their services. This was a national call. This was a national call. You have to have the passion. You have to have the penchant. You don't just do it for just to be in the limelight. There's nothing menial about it, really. I even think it's divine, because you're helping mankind. You're rendering service. I remember being in Dakar as second secretary. How many calls would I receive in a day? Mange ñew kat mange ci airport bi ding ma mëna ñew jël si. And they were paid their per diem, but it was a pleasure bringing them home. And my late wife Nancy, may Allah grant her Jannah, was a good hostess. She was a very good hostess. She would accommodate them and without complaining. She had always had a smile.
That's it.
Yes.
So that must be one aspect, within your trainees that you really had to battle with.
Yes.
That's said because we tend to get the sense that we're doing something menial.
Menial, no. There's nothing menial about it. I told my participants that you have to have that self-assurance, you have to have that self-confidence. There's nothing menial about it. I told them I started from humble beginnings. I'm from protocol officer, second secretary, senior protocol officer, chief of protocol, and the natural consequence was being an ambassador.
Yes. And I imagine that whilst you are training these trainees, and perhaps you've seen some workings of what's going on here, when you compare to your time, how would you compare and contrast, as they say, the difference?
Well, Well, I wouldn't want to compare, but as I said, then we were only few. We were only few, and we gave our best. We definitely gave our best. Now that there are many, I think first and foremost, what they need to do, they need to be trained. They don't need to be sent abroad to be trained outside, because when they go outside to be trained, they are trained by them being inculcated with the cultures of those countries. Now you have somebody who can do it, who can even do it better. I'd say so with all humility, because I mean I know what our concerns are, what our problems are, what the issues are, and they can be addressed. And it's much cheaper. It's much cheaper. And what I did when I just established the consulting firm, what I did, I just closed my eyes and started remembering all that I've been through, all that I did, and alongside the theory, there was the practical scenarios, and I backed the theory with my personal experiences I had, and that made it interesting. That made it interesting. The group we've just heard from ECOWAS, so far, they've been the most interacting and interesting group so far. They were 8, and it's amazing what we have achieved, and this is coming from them. You should read the assessments they wrote about this course.
Yes.
Yeah. We had to make it very interesting, very practical, very African, very West African, because it concerned, ECOWAS. And alongside these trainings, we had site visits, we had courtesy calls, audiences. We paid a courtesy call on Mr. Suleiman Omanjai, the permanent Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Is that all part of the training?
Yes, yeah, it's important.
Yes.
And then I try to align the institutions that exist in ECOWAS with some of the institutions that exist in the Gambia. Like we visited the office of the Chief, His Lordship, the Chief Justice, and we were very ably received by the Honorable Judicial Secretary. We visited the Executive Director of African Center of Democracy and Human Rights Studies. Yesterday we visited the Honorable Chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission. We were to visit the Chief Executive Officer of the OIC, or Organization of Islamic Converts. He had traveled, but then we visited our jewel of the Sadawda Kairaba Jawara International Conference. We visited, who else did we visit? We attended the 57th Independence Anniversary celebration, because we had a training module in planning and organizing state events. I wanted them to see how national events are planned and organized. We were invited.
I wonder there, let me just push you a bit, because we've heard quite a few reporters say this or that, perhaps the organization. What did you make of the organization then on Independence Day?
It was good.
It was good.
It was
That's
very
your
good.
assessment.
It was very good, definitely.
Okay.
It was very good, yeah.
Why do you say that? What did they follow that they should have followed? What's the formula? What makes a successful planner?
Yes, it was a low key, so it was easy to manage. The sitting arrangements were wonderful. The sitting arrangements were wonderful. Not very many people were invited. Not many people overcrowded the presidential days and so on. It was well organized, definitely. I think the chief of protocol and his team, they did a wonderful job.
Absolutely, especially the seating arrangements. Yeah. I don't know, would you put, for instance, leader of the UDP and leader of another party? Do you have to consider these things when you make seating arrangements? You take all these political calculations into who's going to sit where, and there's hierarchy, seniority, title, all these things. Do they matter in when you make?
Oh yes, we spoke about order of precedence. You cannot disrespect order. If you respect order of precedence, it makes your life simple. And in protocol and diplomacy, you don't personalize. It's not the person, but it's the office the person occupies.
Absolutely. And this passion, perhaps I should have asked this in the beginning, this passion that you have How? Where? I know that you were, was it with you at Armitage? I know that you did your secondary school at Armitage.
Yes.
Where did you discover this? And immediately afterwards, you went to University of Dakar.
Yes.
So where did you say to yourself, this is what I want to do, diplomacy?
Okay. Interestingly enough, at Armitage School, when you finish your Form 5 education, at the time, I'm not sure whether it still exists, you would be given a form and you would fill in the form and say what you want to become in life. And surprisingly or interestingly enough, I just wrote diplomat. I want to be a diplomat. I didn't know, I didn't have a clue what diplomat or diplomacy was all about. And it was just, for me then, at the time, for me diplomacy was, being a diplomat was somebody well-dressed, but I can't go wrong because we're talking about dress code.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, that was my notion of being a diplomat. Muna Sanse, you know, that is it. Yeah. But I can't go wrong. It's part of it. But I should say, really, to answer your question, I'm a natural protocol officer. I am always just too happy to help.
Even when you were much smaller?
Yes, yes. I was brought up by my grandparents, my grandmother particularly, and we had people who would come into the house, visitors, foreigners, relatives, friends, and they were given the best. They were given the best. So, I mean, and this exists, this is Gambia, this is what we know of Gambia, and this is what we know of Banjul particularly, you know. I mean, we were open, you know, we always had a boiling gun.
Yes.
You know, every
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
after lunch there's food.
Absolutely.
There's negi gun, a room for visitors.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I think these qualities are dying out. But I should consider myself as being a natural protocol officer, and this was a calling from God. I think this was a calling from God.
That's
it was
it.
a calling from God.
So was that why you decided to go to University of Dakar to do French?
No. As a kid, I used to go to Ziguinchor to visit my dad. He lived in Ziguinchor, and may Allah grant him Jannah. And I would go to Ziguinchor 3 times in the year, and then that was where I developed my love for languages, for French particularly. And when I went to Armitage School, I was one of the best 3 students in French. And then I applied, when I left Armitage School in 1972, I got a holiday job at the income tax department then. And but I was attending French classes at the Alliance Française under Monsieur and Madame Baraf. And I remember some friends were telling me, but you've just completed your secondary education. Why do you have to go back to school? I said, but I have a liking for languages. And then I applied and got a scholarship. I was one of the first Gambian students to benefit from this then Senegalo-Gambian Permanent Secretariat Scholarship. I went to Dakar. I was in 1975. I went together with the likes of Babukar Blaise Diagne, Julia Dolly Nying, Sam George, Raymond Sok, James Benoit, and then I was supposed to stay a year in Dakar. The others, fortunately, they obtained a French government scholarship and left. Then I decided, I didn't come back home. I decided to stay another year, because had I left, I wouldn't be able to benefit from French government scholarship. I stayed, and the following year I got it. In 1978, I went to Besançon, Université de la Franche-Comté in Besançon, towards the Swiss border. Then I graduated in October 1981. We wanted to stay, some of us wanted to stay and do our masters, but then the inevitable happened. We had the Kukoy Samba Sanya thing. I had a wife and a daughter, and then I said, no, I'm going to go home. And then I said to myself, there would be a time that the Gambia government would need bilingual cadres. And it so happened, I came home in November 1981, And then in December, I got a job. I spent a year at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I was busy doing translation, interpretation, French, English, English, French, and also, taking care of protocol duties. In 1982, Babukar Blaise Diagne had to go and further did his diplomatic studies in France at the EAP, and then I took over from him as second secretary at the Gambia High Commission. So the country I was ambassador in 2017, I was second secretary in 1982.
That's it. So here it will be interesting once you got into it as first secretary and then afterwards the chancery. Tell us about that journey, that apprenticeship, as it were. How was that experience for you?
It was quite interesting and quite beneficial, and it was a natural sequence really. I went as second secretary. Later on, went and did my diplomatic course. I went to Germany, yes. And coming from Germany, I was supposed to go to. I had an acceptance at the EAP. And in fact, I had spent a week in Paris, but the colleagues I had at the embassy, the ambassador and the first secretary who were there, they never informed me that I was being accepted at the EAP. And when I came to Dakar, I was told that I had to report to Banjul to the home office. I came and then. Was posted at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and there were some frustrations, to be candid, and then I was forced to leave and request to go to the GNIC on secondment because there was an opening as administrative officer under Mr. Omar Diba. But then Dr. Jebes Langley encouraged me that I have to come back.
He was the Secretary General at the time.
Secretary General, head of the Civil Service.
Yes.
Then I came. There was an opening as for the position of Senior Protocol Officer. I applied, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs then supported my application and delegated Mr. Tijan Sala to accompany me to the interview organized by the Public Service Commission. You had the very disciplined elders in the person of the late Mr. Harry Lloyd Evans, Mr. R.K.O. Joyner, Mr. Mahmoud Seka, and some other people. And I had an interview, and I got the job. I was appointed as Senior Protocol Officer. And that very week, Lady Chilel Jawara was supposed to travel to Brisbane on a conference on fighting drugs. I accompanied her. And it was an interesting journey, really. And as I said, I chaperoned the organization of the Silver Jubilee in 1989. Yes, 1989. It was a success. And on 19th of July, 1991, 1 month exactly after I lost my wife, Mr. Bob, Alaji Momodu Bob, may Allah grant him Jannah, retired, and I took over from Mr. Bob until 1994 when we had a military takeover. And then for 2 years, I was I was doing my private thing in translating French to English, English to French. When I got a job at the World Health Organization until 2012 when I retired voluntarily and moved. I had served as WHO administrative officer. I served in Senegal, in Guinea, in Niger, and in Swaziland, a beautiful country. So, I mean, it was an interesting journey. But you would see that, I mean, I was destined to be in diplomacy all my life until when, in 2016, when we had the new dispensation.
Oh, absolutely, and I was talking to another former ambassador, Dembo Baji, the other day, and we were just comparing then and now in the sense that then from, for instance, first secretary, to become a permanent secretary. He said it took him, what, 25 years?
Yes.
I once listened to Suleiman Bunjak. It took him 16 from when he had his master's degree.
Exactly.
It took him 16 years to become that. With you as well. It took you a long time.
You had to go through the ranks.
You had to go through the ranks.
Yes,
but now it appears as if in recent years, anyway, we've been seeing in our country, particularly during Jammeh's time, really very young people, inexperienced people.
Yes,
it's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it is.
I wonder what impact, what influence you've been having with government in perhaps helping to reform the civil service. We've been talking about reform all the time. I wonder if you've been approached to help in the reform of the civil service.
Well, I've not been approached, but I'm doing it on my own. I think it's an obligation. We have to give back to country and people. So I mean, you have a lot of retired, very experienced civil servants. They are all over. They are around. I think talking about the public service, the civil service reform, they should be contacted. They should be contacted and you know, see what they can do, what their contribution, because this is a national obligation.
Absolutely, and even some might say skillful diplomats. For instance, recently in Casamance, what we've been seeing here, it's a very tricky situation given our relationship with Senegal, and yet we've got this massive business. We've got this triangle of Casamance, Gambia, and Senegal. This is, I suppose, where diplomacy comes in.
Particularly soft diplomacy. What I'm teaching, we are transferring skills, and I mean we need soft diplomacy. You don't want something from somebody, and you go with a negative attitude. You will not get it. As we say in Wolof, wax bu neex sarax la. Yes.
I will challenge you here. If you were to advise the president, this is just a thought experiment, about what's going on in Casamance right now, what would you advise him? I wonder.
That's a tricky one.
Yes.
It's a tricky one. But I would say, I mean, get the persons, the people with experience who understand the situation, get them involved.
That would be as simple as that. Because you see, I'm really asking this because for us, when we look at, we've been around for a while now, so we understand each other, and it's a small place. So because the Gambia, we're having all sorts of agreements, bilateral, multilateral, and the sort. So one becomes fearful that maybe we do not have a skilled and experienced diplomat who would be negotiating on our behalf. So one wonders, I wonder what they're agreeing to. What would the future generation pay?
I agree. I agree. If you don't know the rules, you cannot play the game.
Extraordinary. that's the thing.
Leave it at that.
Yes, and you need to learn the ropes, as it were, before you get there. Okay, so now we're heading towards the end. And what you're offering is really very important, not simply for diplomats and people in the foreign service, perhaps for a lot of people. So now let's just tie it all together. What would the impact, this training, the impact on an organization after they've gone through the training, they've trained a lot of people, the impact on the organization, and perhaps even on the individual? These two. Let's just go into what impact an organization should expect to have after they've gone through your training, and even the individual, both of them at that level. So,
when you say education is expensive, try ignorance. When you say education is expensive, try ignorance. If you don't know it, you don't know it. If you don't know the rules, you cannot play the game. It's good to be trained. Capacity building is important, and it does not cost us anything. It's been budgeted for. It's not expensive. It's local. It's Gambian. Go and be trained. Come and be trained. You gain something for your personal well-being, and when skills are transferred onto the individual also transfers such knowledge to his or her family. I mean, we spend 8 hours in the office together, more time than we spend with our family. We need to have a decorum. We need to have a positive attitude to each other. We need to be tolerant with each other, and things will change. The generation, the young Gambian generation who lived under 22 years of dictatorship, they don't know anything. They don't know anybody but what prevailed during that period. We've lived under the First Republic. We've lived under the Second Republic, and mashallah, we are living under the Third Republic. Let us bring our virtues back. Let us inculcate that on the youth, on the younger generation. They are the leaders of tomorrow.
That's it. So it's like this diplomacy, understanding of these protocols and etiquette, it's like the soft power we need, so that the hard one, we can do the hard work. It's
soft
really
diplomacy.
As
I just said, diplomacy, they need it.
That's what we need.
We live in a global village.
Yes.
And we need to adhere to those international codes of conduct, etiquette and protocol. And protocol is nothing but good manners and common sense. Just that, nothing else. Do unto others as you would like others do unto you.
That's it. And you sort of got to know what your strengths are, and you work to your strengths. I understand that when Sadauda came as president, our economy was dependent on one cash crop. There was nothing else. But he seemed to have cultivated diplomacy, having friendships, agreements, alliances with lots of countries. So a country like Gambia particularly needs that because of our size. It's really that diplomatic muscle where we can be big, and we became big in many ways.
Oh yes, that would be our point 4.
That's just that is it.
Point 4.
Yes. So now we've come to the end. So of course, more trainings planned, but private sector. What has been the response of, for instance, private sector organizations?
The private sector. Well, I got a lot of support, and I continue getting a lot of support from the Commissioner General of the Gambia Revenue Authority in the person of Mr. Yankuba Dabo, definitely. And so far, I've just got two trainings done for the private sector. One for the GRA and for the central bank. I'm knocking on doors. I'm keeping on knocking on doors. I'm someone who doesn't take no for an answer. I've approached the GRA. It's not GRA, GPA. I mean, I've got an appointment with the managing director, Mr. Usman Jobate, and likewise, I'm going to all the other private sector and encourage them to send in their staff members to be trained. It is in their interest.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just as a final short question, so what would you say is really the main challenge to diplomacy? What would you say is that? What is the main challenge for diplomacy?
It depends on the situation. We have a lot to learn. We, the Gambia, we have a lot to learn, and diplomacy now it's not defined by big power, big country, small country. No, it's a give and take. We need each other. Let us capitalize on our relationship with our closest neighbors, and let it be a win-win situation. Yes.
Well, we tend to say win-win, but it's rarely like that, because the bigger power somehow tends to get its way, as it were. So some of us, that's what we think anyway. Maybe we're being cynical, but it appears that it can never be equal bargaining because of the inequality in our bargaining powers, so that will inevitably influence the negotiations and what is agreed.
Yeah, but in diplomacy we are taught that there are no permanent friends but permanent interests. So each country guards its own interests. But you remember the story of David and Goliath?
Goliath, yes. Absolutely. You just never know. So this is it. So when I take these things and I want to apply it to an individual, yes, I need to dress well. And what other qualities would you say would make sort of like, yeah, that's a diplomatic person, or he's a person who knows protocol or etiquette?
Integrity.
Integrity.
Yesterday we had an interesting speech delivered by Mrs. Ami Bensouda on integrity. It was quite interesting, and the participants were really pleased. And in fact, I just got a message from them saying that I shouldn't forget to send them copies of Madam Bensouda's presentation. And we also had in the evening we had a paper presented, or lecture presented by Mr. Suleiman Babu Samba on the ingredients of diplomatic capacity. Yeah? And that leads me back to say, if you don't know the rules, you cannot play the game.
And for the individual, for me, this is quite sobering. You've seen how diplomacy can really contribute, or protocol and the etiquette, how it can contribute to what we say attitudinal change.
Yeah.
We're always talking about, oh, the corruption here and there, the attitudes you see even in people in the streets. It used to be so civil. Now what I see is, oh, the civil space is so uncivil these days. So it contributes to culture.
Culture, yes.
In many ways, even at that individual level.
I think the strategy, Mr. Mboj, is let's inculcate soft diplomacy into the younger generation, and there would be attitudinal change. We need to change our attitude to each other, towards each other. Let's start by that.
That's it. And it's the institution, that's where it begins. Even the home is an institution.
Exactly.
That sort of thing.
Exactly.
And then it spreads out. Thank you very much, Ambassador Ibrahim Usman Dur. It was fantastic. I learned a lot about what you do.
Thank you.
There you've been watching the Viewpoint. I was there with the Ambassador Ibrahim Usman Dur, and we were talking about diplomacy, protocol, and etiquette, and how significant, how important that is, not only for our organizations, but for us personally. Until next time, bye-bye.